when we combine the demand side of the market with the supply side of the market together, we can get our idea of what market equilibrium is going to be. So where does market equilibrium actually happen for us? Simply put, this is going to occur where quantity supplied is exactly equal to quantity demanded. So QS equals to QD. And when this is going to happen, we find out two things. We figure out where our equilibrium price is going to be, and also where our equilibrium quantity is also going to be. And these are the two things that we are going to be interested in within this particular model. So where QS equals to QD, we find equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. And our idea of equilibrium just tells us that this is where the markets are going to be converging to. It's going to be our happy little place. It's where the market or the economy is going to be most efficient because QS equals to QD, so everything is hunky-dory within our little model that we have right here. So let's go ahead and combine supply and demand, our curves, into one particular Cartesian plane and see what market equilibrium actually looks like graphically. Simply put, we have a simple graph where we just have supply and demand together. So here, suppose we have price, we have quantity, and we have demand. We have a simple demand curve, downward sloping, and we have a supply curve that's upward sloping as well. So essentially with this, where do you think our equilibrium is going to be? Our equilibrium is going to be at the single intersection, I'll put this in a new color, the single intersection between supply and demand. So this single point between the supply and demand curves is our idea of equilibrium. Because what happens at this single intersection? At the single intersection, we know that QS is exactly equal to QD. So here, I'll give you this number right here. Suppose 50. And then also we can read it off, we can read the equilibrium price off the price axis, which equals to 10. So with this, we know exactly that this is going to be our equilibrium because QS equals to QD. We can say that equilibrium price is equal to $10. Remember, we read price off of the vertical axis, while equilibrium quantity is going to be read off of the horizontal axis. Equilibrium quantity is equal to 50. So 50 units of this good. And why is this? Because here, remember that every single point on the demand curve, every single point on the supply curve correlates to a quantity supplied and quantity demanded. At a price of $10, we hit the demand curve, we go straight down. That is a quantity demanded equal to 50. We do the same thing for the supply curve. At a price of 10, we also hit the supply curve as well. We go straight down. That also equals to QS equals to 50. So here, this is the condition that needs to be met in order for us to have equilibrium. QD has to equal to QS. However, there are some instances, as we've already talked about, where the market may not be at equilibrium. It may not be at a little happy place right here. So what exactly is going to be occurring within the markets if prices are too high or prices are too little? We're going to notice that we're not in equilibrium because QS and QD are no longer equal to one another. So suppose that I tell you that at the current marketplace, in this economy, the price is equal to 15. So price equals to 15. What type of economic situation do you think that we're going to find ourselves in? First of all, which one of these is going to be bigger? Which one is going to be smaller? Is QD bigger or is QS bigger? In order to see this, just go ahead and carry out your price until you hit the demand or hit the supply curve. So here at a price of 15, which one of these curves do we hit first? We hit our demand curve first. So as we go straight down, we know that demand has to be something less than 45. So I'll just go, something less than 50. So here I'll just go ahead and say maybe 45 in this instance. Remember, don't really worry about where these numbers are coming from. I do have to provide you with this type of information. Next, we hit the supply curve second, and we see that's going to be, as we bring this all the way down in terms of our quantity axis, it has to be bigger than 50 because this is our number line. So I'll tell you that maybe this is 55 in this instance. So with this, we know that QD is smaller than QS. And this, once again, makes economic intuition. This makes economic sense according to the law of demand and law of supply. With a high price, consumers are not going to be buying as much, but with a high price, suppliers are going to be supplying a lot. So here we have QD equal to 45, and we have QS equal to 55. So this tells us that we are not in equilibrium because QS does not equal to QD. In fact, QS is bigger than QD. So QD smaller than QS. And what do you think this is going to be called? What special situation can we give to this? This is telling us that we actually have too many goods in the marketplace. So we have a surplus or excess supply of goods. Excess supply. And anytime we have a surplus or excess supply of goods being brought out into the marketplace, it just tells us that we have too many goods in the market. Too many goods in market. Market. So here, firms and corporations, they're actually selling 55 units. They're bringing out 55 units of the good, but consumers are only actually buying or demanding 45 units. So this tells us that we actually have a surplus in the marketplace, and can we figure out the exact amount of the surplus? Yes. All we really need to do is take the difference between QD and QS. So QS minus QD, the difference right there is that we have 10 units of surplus. And we really don't make a differentiation between positive and negative numbers right here. We just say that, hey, if the difference between these numbers, that's going to be the amount of our surplus, or as we see in the next sort of part, the shortage, that just tells us that, hey, if QS is bigger than QD, we immediately know that we have a surplus. So anytime QS is bigger than QD, we have a surplus. So what exactly is going to happen in this marketplace in order for us to reach equilibrium? So we can use a little bit of economic intuition as well. We know the scenario can't last forever because we are above our equilibrium. We are no longer having QS equals to QD. So in this instance, we notice that what is going to be in the best interest of suppliers to do? So typically when firms or corporations, they have an excess supply of goods, what do they normally do in order to get rid of the surplus? They're going to go ahead and try to lower the price in order to get rid of the surplus. So they're going to have sales, they're going to have clearances, and so they're basically going to reduce the price. And when the firms and corporations reduce the price, that's going to cause us to go shift from our $15 right here down to our $10 point, where supply and demand are going to exactly equal to one another. And once again, this is going to be our happy little place. So we reach our equilibrium. So producers and firms are actually encouraged to reduce their price until once again we reach our equilibrium in order to get rid of this surplus, this economic situation right here. Suppose on the other hand, we have prices that are too low. So what happens if prices are equal to $5? So here we just come to the opposite scenario. So at a price of $5, we end up somewhere like this. We hit right here, and that's kind of not lining up, but we'll say it's right here. So sometimes when you draw these supply and demand curves, they don't exactly match up, but we'll go ahead and say that matches up with this. So the price of $5, what happens now? We notice that QD is now larger than QS. So at a price of $5, QD is equal to 55. Because we hit the demand curve last or second, but QS is smaller, so we hit that curve first. So QS is equal to 45 in this instance. So here at a price of $5, we as consumers, we want to demand a lot, but firms and corporations, they're not willing to supply as much. So in this scenario, once again, we are not in equilibrium because these two numbers, QD and QS, are not equal to one another. So what does this tell us about the marketplace? We notice that QD is larger than QS. So here, this is coming us to our second economic situation or scenario, which we consider to be a shortage. So there's actually there's not enough goods within the marketplace. So we are demanding more than there's actually being put in terms of the marketplace. So a shortage or excess demand. Excess demand. Shortage, excess demand tells us that not enough goods are in the market. Not enough goods in market. And once again, can we figure out the specific amount of this shortage? Yes, all we really need to do is just take the difference between QS and QD. So in this scenario, when prices are $5, we have 10 units of shortage. And once again, we really don't make a differentiation between positive and negative right here. So QS minus QD is negative 10 technically. But once again, we just want to go ahead and say that if QD is bigger than QS, we immediately know that we're going to be in the shortage in this instance. So here, just take the difference between these two numbers in order to find short amount of the shortage or surplus. It's up to you to decide whether or not, hey, is QS bigger than QD or is QD bigger than QS, that type of thing. And once again, this scenario cannot last forever because we are not in equilibrium. So how exactly do we get back to our happy little place? Well, producers, once again, are going to be encouraged to raise prices. So they notice that there are a lot of people that are willing to buy this product at something higher than $5. So they're going to go ahead and seek these buyers out and say, hey, what happens if I go ahead and charge you maybe $6, $7? So they're going to go ahead and seek out these buyers until finally the price is going to keep on increasing until we reach our equilibrium point, which is, once again, where these two curves are going to intersect, the single intersection point of supply and demand, where price is equal to $10 and quantity is equal to 50 units. So in each of these scenarios right here, we have our happy little place where these curves are intersecting. We have a scenario where prices are too high, where we're led to a surplus, or where prices are too low, where we're led into a shortage. And basically, this is our analysis of the supply and demand curves just by taking a look at a static supply curve, and static demand curve. So these aren't changing at all. And essentially, this is what we see in the next few slides right here. So when prices are too high, just using a few different numbers right here, we have a surplus, and producers are once again encouraged to reduce prices, have sales, have a clearance until we reach our equilibrium point. If prices are too low, then we have a shortage, and producers are encouraged to raise prices until once again we reach our equilibrium. So this just gives us an idea of what our equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity are going to be, the single intersection between supply and demand, and a few of the different economic scenarios that can occur when we're not in equilibrium, when prices are too high, when prices are too low. However, we are going to be a little bit interested in seeing exactly what happens to our equilibrium when we actually have a determinate shift of demand and a determinate shift of supply, which is one of the biggest types of interpretations and analysis and predictions that we have within the supply and demand model. So having this foundation right here, we're going to go ahead and build up what happens to our equilibrium when we have these determinate shifts in the next section.